In this tutorial we start learning a Queen Studio. Studio is consisted of the following components: Toolbox, and 3 windows: Properties window, History window, and System log window. History window indicates changes while working, System log window indicates various studio messages. These 2 windows are auxiliary, and I recommend to switch them off, in order to increase a working area. You can return them at any time if required. In order to create a project, press a New Project button and then select a project location folder. After that, specify the name of your project and select a template. Queen Studio offers 3 templates. Empty template is an absolutely empty project. Base template contains several base components. Typical template contains almost all components types by 1 instance for each type. I suggest to use the base template. We have 4 components created here: Navigator for the game flow control, General Sound Controller, System Logger allows to indicate various running messages, and the last specific component indicates the name and parameters of any other component is located under the mouse cursor at the moment. Sometimes it can be very useful on the practice. To save the project, use this button. Pay attention, if you made any modification, the Save button becomes active, this means the changes were detected. In order to close the project, use this button. If there are any changes detected, Queen Studio warns you about this with a special dialog window. To open project, use Open Project button and select Room XML file in the File dialog. So, let's start with the project internals. This window with the components is called a model window. All the components inside this window is located on the canvas. Canvas is a base components container, and it's like a substrate for components location. When you select any component using the left mouse button, Queen Studio shows the selected component's parameters in the Properties window. If you click on the canvas, at the free space, Queen Studio shows the canvas and settings. We can choose any image for the substrate. Let's test it. Usually we use a building plan as a substrate to locate the component on the plan, as they are located in real. To remove background image you can use the context menu is called by the right mouse click, or by pressing this button in a toolbox. Also we can change a background color. Besides the canvas settings, Queen Studio offers to set up project settings and the editor settings. Project settings contain the project name, will be shown on the Game Master form. One instance flag forbids to run more than one instance of the application to avoid of Game Master mistake. Server and key parameters we skip for a while. For the convenience, editor setting have only 2 parameters. Snap grid parameter allows to snap components to the virtual grid. This feature made for the model alignment. I show how it works. We recommend to work with 5 or 10 snap grid value. No value removes the snap grid. Queen Room parameters references to the location of Queen Room application in order to run it directly from the Queen Studio. Usually this is the same folder where Queen Studio is located, so leave this parameter as is. To run Queen Room application, press this button, and the game manager will run with our project. As you see, Queen Room has the same view as we created in the Queen Studio. The components are located at the same places. This application is a Game Master main control panel. There are 2 possible Queen Room run variants. Run Queen Room on the localhost for the emulation and debug purposes. And run Queen Room as is. We will discuss this later in details. Let's return to the editor. Undo command cancels the last change. This feature implemented similarly to any editor you used to work. Also, Queen Studio Editor contains alignment buttons for the component location correction. I show how it works on the following example. The next important feature is a scenario or game flow editor. We will discuss it in a separate tutorial. And the last feature is the special effects or macro effects. We will discuss it later as well. This was a short overview of Queen Studio. Let's return to the Room Model Editor and editing components parameters and start with a board. Board is usually Programmable Logic Controller Reference or PLC, that can control the endpoint electronics. Queen can handle different PLC boards object with different types. This means Queen is suggested to support various types of PLC. To access escape room electronics, that plug to the PLC boards we create, components are combined in the Electro submenu. Queen supports 5 types of electronic types. PWM is used for smooth control, like LED lighting brightness. Out is binary or digital control for switching on or off any kind of electrical devices. AIN is an analog input to handle different sensor with a range of input parameters, like photoresistors, pre-assure sensors and so on. DIN is a digital input to handle sensors with a binary signal, like buttons, reads and limit switches. These 4 base objects can describe various types of electronics. There is one more component, is called UNI for the extended functions. We will discuss it in a separate tutorial. The next component type is audio. It allows to play sounds on the different channels, change playing volume, and so on. Adapters are used as an interface object to communicate with various Queen applications in the network. Queen has built-in applications like Queen Sound for playing audio on the network and Queen TV for playing video files and giving the text clues on the displays, located inside the escape room. The next object type is a logger. It allows to indicate different messages for the game master. The messages can be divided into two types. System messages are generated automatically by the Queen engine. And user-defined messages can be programmed from the scenario editor as a useful tips for the game master. Button is a component that allows a game master to influence on the game flow, like giving a clues, changing electronic objects' parameters and so on. The idea is quite simple. Button is binded to a macro effect, executed when game master press the button. Macro effect is a sequence of any actions with any components on the canvas. Queen also has graphical components, are purposed for visualization only. These components are combined to the helper submenu. For example, dimmer component allows to visualize a color of RGB LED strip. I show how it works. And the last component is a label. This is a multifunctional component. Originally label was just a text, and if you specify bind parameter as a static text, it would be just a text. We can set text alignment and set any text inside, like this. But label also has another behavior models. If you bind it to the time, it will show an elapsed time since the start of the scenario. If you bind label to the scenario, this allows you to select different scenarios of your escape room, previously programmed in the scenario editor. If you bind label to the language, this allows you to select different languages from the list. When you change a language, like this, Queen Room changes internal settings and it is possible to run, for example, different audio and video files, corresponding to the current language. If you bind label to the mode, it indicates a current mode for the game flow, like stopped, paused, playing, and so on. Label binded as a status, shows parameters of the component, is located under the mouse cursor. If you bind label to the abonents, it shows all abonents are currently connected to the Queen Room server. We will discuss Queen Room server and API in separate tutorial. Variables binded label shows all the variables are currently used in the scenario. Macro effect binded label shows all the macro effects are currently executed. And the last thing regarding the label. This navigator is a label too, binded to a navigator option. It allows to manage a game flow, and it is possible to create only one navigator label on the canvas. In the end, we will discuss a user interface features. For example, let's create a one more logger component. As you see, user interface features are combined in a UI block. Render option allows you to select a render policy, like render text only, background only or both text and background. Also, we can change font for any components. Assuming all components have text and background, we can change these colors. For the specific components with an opportunity of control, like out, there is another option, is called background signal color. This is background color in a signal state, like electromagnetic lock is on. This was made to differ states, if the electronic component has an active signal state or not. I show how it works on the out example. For the PWM and AIN component, we can select an orientation, it can be vertical or horizontal. But if these names are not cute, you can specify any name on the form using a name in the UI block. Almost each component has an alignment option for the text position. Regarding the names, Queen component must have a unique name. This name will be shown on the form. The set of the UI block parameters is called style, and Queen allows to copy and paste them. For example, I create several out components with a generic style. After that, I create a out component and set up a custom style like this. We can copy a style to a clipboard using context menu. Using the same menu, we can select all relative items. Relative means the items with the same type. After paste command, Queen Studio applies copied styles to all selected components. Any object can be deleted. If you duplicate an object, Queen Studio create an object clone, except the name, that is generated as unique. The last thing I wanted to say in this tutorial, Queen Studio can render not only text and background, but it can render a PNG images instead. For example, you can use two images, like door opened, and door closed, attach these images to any object, like out, and specify render options to visualize these images instead the text and background. These picture sets are called pixets. They allow to create a good visualization on the Game Master form, but we will discuss this in the separate tutorial.